Welcome to episode 12 of Web Vision's podcast. This is Shlomo Rabinowitz with Visible Magic. I do strategy. This is my co-host, Vic. Say hello, Vic.
Hello, welcome to Web Vision podcast, episode 12.
Crazy that we're already on 12 and we have not killed each other yet. We have, I think, our first real guest. We just interviewed him, George Kamide. You can find him on LinkedIn. He has a really good podcast on cybersecurity and AI. We talked about his Bare Knuckles podcast. We talked about how AI and trust in education and how this also is being dealt with in cybersecurity in terms of training and hiring in the cybersecurity field. Vic found them. He was super smart. We're excited to show you this about 25-minute discussion of all the. He's super opinionated, and though he's deep into AI and cybersecurity, he has a total humane distrust of just being open to it. He wants it for certain things and very pinpointed in his discussion. And so we welcome you to this week's podcast, and make sure, let's just say it now because we won't see you at the end. Press like, subscribe, see us on LinkedIn, on YouTube. We are starting to get the word out. We're heading over to Podstop Media very soon. We're getting that finished up. And next week we'll be talking, I think, about the Apple Vision Pros. But this week here we go with George Kamide of Bare Knuckles Pod. All right, our guest for episode 12 is George Kamide. I'm saying that right, Kamide.
That's right.
Sorry, even though I just asked and wrote it down, I wanted to make sure. And he's from the Bare Knuckles podcast. They do a lot of talk about cybersecurity, AI, where I think there's an important mission to talk, about the mix between those two. And we just kind of want to get his thoughts of what that education within the space, how people are engaging with AI and cybersecurity, and just kind of maybe tell some workflows that you use within AI and cybersecurity for our users, because we have a lot of developers who listen to us.
Yeah, for sure.
The focus is, and our focus with over at Visible Magic is AI, AR, blockchain work, and basically the interoperability of situations, right?
Yeah.
So let's just start. You have Bare Knuckles podcast. Do you want to tell our folks about that a little?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks grew out of frustration between vendors and buyers in cybersecurity. Despite industry predicated on trust and doing the right thing and securing people's data, there's a lot of mistrust between those two sides. So I am George on the vendor side. My co-host is a chief information security officer who is also named George. Felt like it sort of wrote itself, and we were bonding over this mutual dislike of this distrust, and we thought we got to do something better. We got to bring it to light. And so the show takes the format of the name. The Bare Knuckles part is kind of the airing of grievances, and is generally not safe for work. We curse a lot. There's a lot of frustration. But the Brass Tacks portion is, okay, well, let's offer some solutions. Let's not just admire the problem. So that's where we come from.
Awesome. And so where are we at right now, how you're feeling in terms of, there's a lot of tools that are being used. Mm-hmm. What sort of tools in the cybersecurity world are actual things people are using right now, and why? Why do you trust those particular ones?
Well, I think in cyber right now we have a paradox. There is a complaint that there is not enough tooling. When you look at other industries such as fintech, there are like up to 30,000 different companies, many of which are overlapping or doing some of the same work. In cyber right now, we're kind of between 4,000 and 5,000, and there's a lot of complaint that it's too many. I can't make these choices. A lot of them are redundant. So there are some thinkers like Ross Haliuk, who just came out with a book called Cyber for Builders, who's making the argument that no, actually, you need to push the innovation curve. You need more companies, you need more ideas. But I think the problem that cybersecurity teams are having is either a lot of them are really niche solutions, in which case you have increased the complexity of trying to protect data information systems. And really where that gets bogged down is in usability, right? Like if teams have to toggle between several different tools, things slow down, data is lost, context is lost. And I think we are in this economic climate going to start to see more M&A, more consolidation, but then we're going to start to swing out and see a little bit more innovation and new kinds of ideas. And we've begun to see that a little bit with AI. The biggest players are kind of jamming large language models into their tooling, really as a augmentation of the UI. And I think there's a lot of promise there because two reasons: usability and how quickly can I onboard my teams, right? So currently, when you look at like giant data aggregation tools like a SIM or a SOAR, you have to ingest a lot of different data from a lot of different places. And then you have to run SQL or KQL queries depending on the language. So that's a highly specialized skill. So from a talent pool, I got to go out and find people who have that experience. And then I got to train them up on these particular tools. So if we can bring that barrier to entry down, we can dramatically increase the number of eyes on problems, hands on keys. But also, if we can just make things faster instead of having to write out the queries, but you can ask like, okay, you have detected this problem. What other endpoints has this malware potentially touched? Like if you could just ask it in plain language, you're saving time, you're increasing your speed to respond to those problems. And I think there's a lot of promise there. But I want to be very clear, like LLMs are just like one facet of AI, and machine learning has been in cyber for a good many years, because just at the base level of ingesting a lot of data and just being able to core a lot of different data points, there was like no way that sort of your regular tooling was going to do it. So it was early to machine learning. And then it got probably a little complacent and eager to see where we can push from here.
So Vic has to make teams, and you know, as the CTO, right? I make the opposite side. I'm on client sides. I do customer paths, right? I'm kind of like the you George, and Vic is the other George. And I'm curious what you're saying, and to hear Vic's perspective on it. One thing I was hearing from you, and because you there was a lot packed into what you said. One thing I heard is these AIs will allow a lower entry point to get new coders into, which is, you're saying, a good thing for more eyes looking at problems.
Well, so we can debate whether there is a talent shortage. There is a purported talent shortage in cybersecurity. I would make the argument that we have a lot of gatekeeping that's not allowing a lot of entry-level talent in, or not a lot of investment in training them. But a common complaint is like, I just don't have time to train people, so I need to go hire the people who already know how to query these systems, who already have experience with these systems. But if you could lower that, two things happen. One, just on a very pragmatic business level, maybe you have a lower payroll, right? Because you can afford to hire earlier. But better, you can also, if you bring people in at entry level, you can train them into the habits you want, rather than trying to untrain the bad habits maybe they brought from somewhere else, right? And you can get them more inculcated into your processes and your. So I think that you can get a faster response time. But I also think, just even if you are well versed in those query languages, writing the code to do it versus literally just asking the machines in plain language. And my dream is not just typing in a chatbot. My dream scenario is just being able to talk to the machine, right? Like the sort of high bar that I set when I talk to other lay audiences who don't work in tech, like, what is this AI about? I was like, I want you to picture that scene in Interstellar, right? The Matt Damon character has blown the airlock. The Endurance is like spinning out of control. And Matthew McConaughey asks TARS to to calculate the rotation speed. So what do you have in that situation? I mean, that is like a sci-fi movie on the face of things. But you have in Matthew McConaughey a highly trained and highly qualified human decider talking to, so natural language, TARS, who is an AI but plugged into the sensors and the systems inside the station. But it is the human who makes the calculated decision. I need you to do that math much faster than I can with the telemetry and the data that you have. And then I am going to make the ostensibly crazy decision to fire the thrusters and try to match the rotational speed. But that is the perfect scenario, right? Like, you have highly qualified humans who understand the business context of the threat in your environment, and you can just ask the tools. You know what to ask, but it can do these calculations and these analyses orders of magnitude faster than humans can respond.
That's actually a very enlightening answer, because I was curious about one point. For my perception of the cybersecurity, as you know, the whole industry at this point, is that we are losing the race against the threats, and the volume of threats, the volumes of actors is just immense. And if we can take, for example, some big enterprise, yeah, we all heard all these ransomware attacks. A lot of threats have been found recently in United States on the industrial level. So I would say it's, like a very unequal play, because the security was not an angle for decades for the evolvement of IT. And from my perspective, the only play to win this race is using the self-evolving or some sort of autonomous, either AI-driven or call it like machine learning, like self-teaching systems, which do operate in background, and the operator can advise or make a decision what's going on, okay? But without using something extremely powerful to aggregate that stream flow of data, run the correlation, run the machinery behind that, it's not possible to be on par with this volume of threats. And from my perspective, without proper incorporation of highly sophisticated AI tools and protocols inside the everyday use of enterprises, it's almost impossible to win this race. Am I correct on this stance?
I think so. I mean, the common saying in cyber is we have to be right all of the time, and they only need to be right one time, right? And I think against that context, with the availability of open source models and a lot of training data, we've seen like exponential progress in the ability to leverage some of these technologies for attack. So just this week, right, there was headlines around a firm in Hong Kong that lost $25 million because someone got on a Zoom call and was able to impersonate the CFO in video and in voice. So just to give the listeners a sense of this, in 2019, there was a voice clone attack on an energy company subsidiary in the UK. They got taken for $243,000. And that was written up as very novel. So that's 2019. By 2022, local sheriff's offices are warning what I call civilians, not people in tech, not people who think about this all the time, just families, of virtual kidnappings, right? People clipping a few bits of audio from their daughter's Snapchat video, cloning the voice, creating just awful, scripted attacks like I've been taken, whatever. That's what is that? That's 3 years, right? From novelty to basically commodified use. Last August was DEF CON 31, where we saw researchers show this capability of grabbing some off-the-shelf tooling and some models and trying to build up this ability to show up in real time as somebody else, both in facial features and voice on a Zoom call. Okay. So that's August. February, $25 million. That's 6 months. Like the rate of improvement is staggering. And Vic, to your point, yes, we need more advanced tooling. And in fact, I think even in the CISA's guidance on investing in AI for cybersecurity, one of the things they highlighted was potentially using AI for like self-healing code, like basically programs that can sort of continuously check their own vulnerabilities and heal, right, as it were, or patch themselves, so you're not doing this manually. I mean, that would be a dream. But the real conundrum for our teams, our defenders, I think, is in cyber, they have the holy trinity, which is people, process, and technology, right? You have to have people with technical skills, you have to have your processes so it's repeatable and scalable, and then you have your technology. And most CISOs, or chief information security officers, will always argue that the latter two are more important than the tech. But when we talk about AI, it's all on the tech. There's a lot of hullabaloo around the tech. And if I would make the argument that today, if you had a blank check and you gave people just the most advanced technology, it would run into the wall of process, because all of our processes are predicated on specialized human knowledge, because we've never had machines that could do it, right? So we have vulnerability management, we have governance, risk, and compliance, we have your red team, we have your security engineers. We made humans really specialized for a reason. But and it's more or less like a chain of command, right? Like things move down either through triage in a SOC and then onto incident response, but things get handed off to specialized humans. I have asked people, if you could do threat modeling in 2 minutes instead of 2 weeks, how fast could your teams respond? So like, even if you had the tech, we're not architected. The teams are not architected to ingest that level of quickness and do something with it. So to your point, Vic, I think the future is, if we're not going to be sort of replaced by specialists, right? Like pen testing is already getting automated. And that's probably just going to be for more and more the case. So my argument is that we as humans need to become more multidisciplinary. Like the red team needs to understand GRC, needs to understand, like you have to have these like task force that can swarm on events, and you have a lot of people who have broad knowledge, to your point, Shlomo, about a lot of different things, because if the machines are handling a lot of the analysis, they have to be orchestrators rather than analyzers. I think that's the big shift, is like we move from analysis to orchestration. I think it's going to take a while. I think it's really hard for humans to adapt to fast technology changes.
Well, especially some of the things you're talking about, which is really tech company process, like human workflow within a company. And this is going on 15, 20 years. That's how ingrained it is with us, is this process of like, okay, don't silo your divisions, right?
Yep.
Have marketing and product, have members aligned on a weekly meeting, right? So we could start making things that are appropriate for everybody and build them all at the same time, right? So we still have problems making that, even though we know that's an important thing to do. That is still a human issue in companies that they can't even do effectively. Most of them can't do effectively already, right? So it's interesting when we think now we're going to have a George, a very smart multidisciplinarian, right, monitoring a bunch of different sorts of instances within a company, because in the end, that's sort of, knowing 3 inches of the whole world is more 3 inches deep of the whole world is more meaningful than knowing, one deep trench that's 3 inches wide.
Yeah, you have to be able to connect the dots, and you have to be able to connect it in the context of the business, which the machine is going to be hard pressed to sort of ever learn. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
What does this mean against the larger business strategy or our goals for this year? And I think this is the other part that gets really, really, really tricky for security teams, right? So security isn't like stop all the stuff. The safest thing to do would be don't do business, right? So that's not, there's this push and this pull between risk management and then the go fast part of it. It's like it's the brake and the gas inside the car. And so today, security like reviews, marketing wants to take on a new ad tech platform, whatever, you might do your due diligence, you might, third-party risk assessment. That's cool. Like, we know how to do that. I'm evaluating software, and sometimes we do it better than others. But to your all's point, and I think what you're getting at is, if AI comes into business process, like, the CEO is like, we need to move faster than the competition. This, I think, is where there's a disconnect in our understanding. So AI is not just a data analyzer, right? So another triad we have in cybersecurity is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are using AI in your business processes, in order to be valuable, the AI has to sit right on the data layer, or what we would call the crown jewels, the stuff we're trying to protect. It has to be able to interact with it. It has to model on it, and it may have to write to it, right? It may change some of that data. And so if I belabor the car analogy, traditionally cyber has been the seat belts or the brakes or the fuel injection or whatever to protect the cargo as the car gets from point A to B. That's the business moving in a certain direction.
Mm-hmm.
When AI comes for business processes, cyber will now be asked to protect the engine as it's running. And I don't know how we prepare for that, because it's like a completely different paradigm, a completely different way of thinking about how to protect data as it's like essentially in flux.
Well, because before we were caretakers of the data, utilizing tools to help caretake.
Right.
But this sounds like I'm literally leaving it with a nanny, and that nanny is going to make decisions while I'm asleep.
Yes.
Which is not scary in and of itself, but it's something to be cognizant about. Vic, are you ready to have a nanny be on your
Well, I really wish to have some nanny to help with all the security, aspects of even the software development, because it's so many of these. And, all our discussion bring me some idea, like we're poised to lose this race even more, because, for example, we can use, and there are already the LLMs which are targeted to help the pen testing, and I think there are plenty of possibilities, like in fuzzing, in very sophisticated things, in zero-day detection, in open source repositories. So there are just plenty of them, not even taking into account the possibilities for deepfake, for phishing, for all the things, which is also first time I heard of spear phishing on Markov chains over Twitter, like in 2018. It was the resurgence 2015, and right now we have absolutely different landscape. In just 10 years, it can replicate and mimic person into
well, LinkedIn has a feature in its outreach where you can now like DM somebody, but like generate it with AI, like kind of reads their profile. I was like, you have built spear phishing into the platform. Like,
exactly.
I don't have to do any like heavy research or investigation. I'll just like scrape this person's profile and spit something back to them. Yeah, it's a little.
But is it converting? Does it actually?
I mean, I don't know. I think we're in a period of adjustment, right? So as more stuff comes in, I think more people are becoming inured to it, and you can even kind of start to see the ChatGPT posts and comments, and they're getting called out because the language is very the same. It's very bland, or it has the same. Like, the joke in cyber is that if it ever says "in the ever evolving digital landscape," ChatGPT, like 100% of the time.
That's how I feel. It's this kind of flowery language to a fifth grader that is part of the tell to me, right? It's like, and I have people who I respect, who I've known in this industry for 15 years, who are now writing constantly like this output, and I don't understand that they're allowing themselves to have that sort of writing put out. Like, it's actually not great copy. It's not convertible.
Yeah. And I think in an age where everyone is sort of racing to digitize things, it's actually trust will be at a very high premium.
Yes.
You know, like when you can meet your customer face to face and you can have those interactions, like there is no replicating that. And, you know, no like 5,000 cold email blast is going to do that for you.
In the end, people hear me say this all the time. Tools are great, but nothing has replaced a handshake. And that's why the handshake in the end is free, but it takes a lot of work to get those two hands to meet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I want to think about AI in terms of the ways it can help all the humans just do things either faster or better. So I'll give you a practical example. I always go into my kids' school for Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. And my daughter's of an age now where I thought, okay, her class can handle like a red team exercise, like a red versus blue team exercise. So I was making dinner and I had the AirPods in and I was talking to ChatGPT and I was walking through several scenarios. I was like, okay, so I want basic red team, blue team. Let's call it like storm the castle, or let's predicate it around like one team's trying to protect, and it would and like outline it, right? And it was spitting back. It would read it back to me, and I was like, I don't like that. Can you move 0.3 up one and just take out 0.2 and read it back to me? This is my hands are making pasta. I am having this conversation with ChatGPT, but it, of course, is transcribing everything, right? So at the end, I do get essentially an outline, which I can then put into a program I use, Gamma, which is basically like PowerPoint on steroids. I'll never go back to PowerPoint. You know, it basically outlines this highly responsive deck. It's pretty clean. I go in, I like edit a bit, get an image out of Midjourney. So like from ideation to essentially a curriculum a lesson that I could take in was like 35 minutes. And like that was the dream to me. Like I am done typing prompts. I really just want to talk to the machines. Like that's what I want more than anything, because it's that much faster, right? And I know like the Vision Pro is sort of ridiculous right now. It's going to get better. I'm all for spatial computing. I want lots of stuff, and I want to just be able. I want my Tony Stark moment. I want my Wakanda moment. I want to be able to just like move things from here to there and just like talk at it and have it, you know, tell me information back from the system. And I think in many respects, like even school teachers, they're like, oh, chatbots could be tutors. I was like, that is garbage. You know, teachers do more than just like transmit a lesson. But teachers right now are bogged down in having to take meaningless notes and write all these reports. What if they could just do like a captain's log at the end of the day? Like, oh, you know, I noticed that so-and-so has repeatedly tripped up on this lesson, and I suspect, but not have to like sit there and type it out. And it's just getting transcribed perfectly, and it's in a record, and they can like draw from it. Again, just like think about like, what do the people do well, and how can we take the nonsense off of their plate so that they can just do those things better?
Well, especially when you talk about, because you brought up teaching, right? Like teachers and their curriculum, sure, they fine tune a curriculum to their specific who they are in their audience, but they also are coming from a certain body of knowledge that they have to use. They can't go outside that thing, which makes AI really good for teachers, right? It allows them to just get that empirical knowledge that they have to put through for standardized test situations, things like that. But it also gives them their editorial creativity to make their lessons plans for their fifth graders. And it frees them up time where we already know teachers are bogged down needlessly.
Yeah, and people are like, "Oh God, kids are cheating with ChatGPT and like not writing their essays." And I was like, "Great, no more writing essays at home."
Anyone ever seen Cliff Notes? What happened?
Yeah, or like
AI,
dude, like slide rule and TI-83. It was like, oh, the end of math, right? Yes. But you know what I did with the TI-83 is
upside down on our calculators. We used them to do really complex trig equations that we can't do ourselves, you know?
Well, or that was like my one, well, not my first, but I learned how to code like the quadratic formula. So I didn't have to like type in all the great, right? So I basically learned an algorithm using this calculator. So the homework changes. My dream is we get back to essentially a Socratic seminar. Like, students should have to stand on their own 2 feet in a class, and you'll understand if they read the material or not, because they got to defend the idea or they got to engage with it. I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of trepidation. Some of it is justified. And to be fair, technology does not have a great reputation in education. A lot of it is snake oil. A lot of it is, let me just throw a bunch of iPads at the problem. Let's replace teachers with whatever. Yeah. And so, like,
Coca-Cola advertising in their curriculum on the television.
Yeah, we gotta earn that trust back. But I think if we just start from a point of view, whether it's cybersecurity, teaching, code development, we have talented humans. They can think in ways that AI cannot. How can we free them up from menial stuff so they can do more of that thinking, and let the machines just take over the emailing or the whatever? Like, that would be extraordinary. Think about how much more productive we would be, not because we have like tools to do it for us, but because we can apply creativity in a different way.
Awesome. I think that's a good sum up point. We are reaching 30 minutes on here, and I don't want to take all your time. Vic, is there any last thing you would like to say to our buddy George?
Just thanks a lot for these ideas and observations. It was really insightful in certain ways regarding development in this field.
I love it. We were just getting started. George, you want to throw out some links, how people can find you, and connect with you?
Yeah, sure. They can just find me on LinkedIn. You can find Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks if you're in cybersecurity, wherever you find your podcasts. We're also on LinkedIn. We do a ton of giveaways, so we'd be happy to have you join as a listener. And thank you for the time and the conversation. I obviously have a lot of feelings about this stuff, and I could talk all day, but I welcome this conversation. It was good. It was nice.
We were just getting started, honestly. That's how it goes. I hope we have you back again. Go check him out on LinkedIn, and we will see you very soon. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.